Hello guys, welcome back. Another day, I'm doing my 2019 NHL Draft tier list. And the 2019 NHL Draft is a pretty decisive one, but where do each prospect place and how does my tier list actually end up looking like? Watch till the end to find out. Now in this video, to make these tiers, I'll be using a site called TierMaker. It's just starting to pop off, it's getting very popular now, and it is actually very easy to use. Now when it comes to the tiers that I'll be using to rank these prospects, we have franchise as the first tier, superstar as the second tier, great as the third tier, average as the fourth tier, and last but not least, bust as the fifth tier. And you'll see the prospects here. When it comes to the prospects that I added for this tier list, I added, I think, 40 in total. So that's a decent chunk of prospects in this video. Most of those guys will be going in the first round, some will be going in the second, but for the most part, these are pretty much the top prospects and the top prospects that most of you guys will know already. Now we're first going to be going into the franchise tier, and for the first guy in franchise, I have Jack Hughes. And this one will be obvious to a lot of you guys. He'll likely be the first overall pick in this upcoming draft by the New Jersey Devils. Putting him in a franchise position is by no means controversial. I don't think he's a generational prospect by any means, but I think he is a franchise leading prospect. He's a guy that I think will change New Jersey Devils quite a bit when it comes to speed and skill. When it comes to Jack Hughes, I think he rightfully deserves to be in the franchise tag, and he's one of the two players to do so. Speaking of which, the second player in the franchise tier is Kakko. You guys know already, he is my favorite prospect in this 2019 NHL Draft. I have him ranked number 1. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Whether he goes with New Jersey or New York, he'll be fantastic in both. When it comes to Kakko, the speed, the skill he has is through the roof. You guys already know that already, but he's a fantastic prospect and deserves that franchise tier. Now going on to the second tier, that being the superstar tier, the first player I have in this tier is Byram. He's a guy that is the best defenseman in this draft class. While there is some solid defensemen other than him, Byram is the guy in this one. He will go top 5 in this draft at least. I can maybe see him going number 3 or even number 4, but Byram will be a superstar in no time and will be one of the best defensemen in the NHL in just a few years. Now for the second guy in the superstar tier, I have Alex Turcotte. You guys know he's my third ranked prospect in this 2019 NHL Draft. I'm a big fan of him, of what he brings, especially offensively. Whoever he goes to, whether it's Chicago, LA, Colorado, Detroit, he is going to be absolutely fantastic, and as the tier shows, I think he will be a superstar. Now for the third player in the superstar tier, I have Dylan Cozens. He's a guy that has been kind of falling a little bit in some people's mock drafts. I had him at number 3 a couple months ago. He's been a little bit falling for me as well, but I've seen him on TSN as also a 6th ranked prospect. He's been a guy that's kind of been slipping a little bit. I still think he's going to be absolutely fantastic. Whatever team he goes on, I think he'll be very, very good. I think he's more of a borderline superstar than a Byram or an Alex Turcotte, but I still think he'll be very, very good, especially at the NHL level. Now last but not least, in the superstar tier, I have Trevor Zegras. He's the last guy in the superstar tier. He is absolutely fantastic. The offense, the defense, it's all there. I mean, he could go anywhere, I think, in this draft. I mean, he could go maybe as down as number 9, maybe go as high as number 4. I can see that definitely happening, but with Trevor Zegras, I think he's a pretty underrated prospect in his own right, and I think he's an amazing one, being that superstar tier. Now heading into the great tier, and this one is chock full of great prospects. There are 25 prospects in this tier, so we might as well get into it. And for the first prospect in the great tier, I have Cole Caulfield. He's an absolute beast, has been fantastic with USDP, scoring goals left and right. And he can go, I can see him maybe going as high as maybe number 6, maybe number 7. I have him going number 8 to the Edmonton Oilers, but he's a fantastic prospect, and the goal scoring is obviously what sticks out for him. Next up in the great tier, I have Peyton Krebs alongside Cole Caulfield. He's an excellent prospect that should go top 10. He is a little bit smaller, but was fantastic with the Kootenay Ice and 100% deserves that great tier. Now for the next two prospects in the great tier, I have Arthur Kaliyev and Alex Newhook. Both fantastic prospects. Both guys that I think should probably go in the top 15. Both are kind of like in my 13 or 12 to 15 range. They're solid prospects, not fantastic ones, but still pretty great. If both guys pan out, Kaliyev being that awesome goal scorer, Newhook being that solid playmaker with great speed, both guys could work out quite well, and I think they are both deserving of that great spot. Now for the next two prospects in the great tier, I have Vasily Podkolzin and Victor Soderstrom. Two solid prospects, Totally different though. Soderstrom being defenseman, Vasily Podkolzin being the winger. Podkolzin has dropped a little bit, especially in mock drafts. Craig Bunn, the guy that was so hard on Podkolzin and so for him, now has dropped him quite bigly. I mean, Victor Soderstrom is a solid defenseman as well. Both prospects, I think, do deserve that great spot. Victor Soderstrom especially. But when it comes to Vasily Podkolzin, he's still pretty controversial. He's a big boom or bust prospect, but I still think in that tier, he is deserving of it. Now for the next two players in the great tier, we have two defensemen, being Thomas Harley and Ville Heinola. Both guys, I think, are deserving. Both are a little bit different. Thomas Harley is a lot more of a power play specialist, very good offensively. Ville Heinola is solid two-way game, defensively and offensively, brings it. But both prospects, I do think, deserve that great spot. Both prospects should go in the first round, especially. Two solid defensemen. Obviously, I don't think they're up to the caliber of a Victor Soderstrom or a Byram, but they're still solid prospect defensemen and will be at the NHL level. Now, for the next two prospects, we have a couple of forwards, being Kirby Dach and Matthew Boldy. Both guys are pretty solid. Both are pretty close in the mock drafts, I would say. Probably both of those guys are going to go in like the 9 to 13 range, I would say. Kirby Dach being the center, Matthew Boldy being the winger. Both guys are solid. When it comes to Dach, there is some skating issues, but the talent is certainly there. Boldy is a fantastic all-around offensive piece, but both guys are very good offensively and will be great forwards at the next NHL level. Now for the next three players, we got a big bunch of forwards, being Bobby Brink, Nils Hoglander, and Philip Tomasino. And all three of those guys are probably going to go in the 20s somewhere. I would say that's about where they would go. Maybe Hoglander goes a little bit earlier, Bobby Brink maybe goes earlier as well. But both those guys, or all three of those guys, are likely outside of the top 15, but all three of those guys are very solid forwards. I'm a big fan of all three personally, especially Nils Hoglander, one of my favorite prospects in this draft, but all three will be very good, and especially Nils Hoglander, who has freaking amazing talent. Now going on to the second row of the great tier, we're first starting out with Brayden Tracey and Cam York. Brayden Tracey being a very solid winger with the Moose Jaw Warriors. He was very good, especially points-wise, has some decent speed, some solid overall skating. We saw that in the World Juniors. Next up was Cam York, who was amazing in the USDP. Defenseman, can put up a lot of points, and is one of the better defensemen in this 2019 NHL draft. Now going on to the three next players in the second row of the great tier, I have three CHL forwards, being Ryan Zucchi, Jacob Pelletier, and Nicholas Robertson. When it comes to my personal rankings of all three, it will be Pelletier first, then it will be Nicholas Robertson second, and Ryan Zucchi third, respectively. But all three guys are very solid. Ryan Zucchi with a bunch of hockey IQ, Pelletier with a lot of skill, and when it comes to Nicholas Robertson, a lot of raw talent. But all three should be very, very solid. And if all pans out, very good NHL players. Now going on to the next two players in row 2 of the great tier, I have Moritz Seider and Connor McMichael. Now Moritz Seider being the awesome German defenseman, made a video about him specifically a couple of days ago. You can watch that if you want, but he's amazing, has great potential also. Same thing going with Connor McMichael, who's a forward with the London Knights. Yes, he was on a fantastic team, but he also was a big part of that. Connor McMichael probably going in the mid-first round, I would say, but still being in the great tier. Now going on to the next three players in row 2 of the great tier, three different forwards we have right here, but three different stories. First one being Nathan Legare from the QMJHL. He's had a great season, one of my personal favorite prospects in this draft. Then you have Samuel Vegamo. He's a guy from the SHL, an overager, but a fantastic one, putting up solid numbers with the Frölunda. And also, last but not least, Pavel Dorofiev, who was kind of switching time with the KHL and the MHL, but is a very talented forward and should go in the first round. Now for the final two players in the great tier, we have Simon Holmstrom and Igor Afanasayev. Now when it comes to Holmstrom, he has split time with the SHL and the Super Elite League, being very solid in both. He was fantastic in the World Juniors with Team Sweden and looked very good, especially offensively. When it comes to Igor Afanasayev, he's a Russian-born player, but in the USHL, he kind of struggled to get a name for himself, but did play very well. From the highlights I did see, I was very impressed with his speed and talent, and that is what's most impressive about him. Now he's the final player in the great tier, but should go in the first round. Now we're heading into the next tier, that being the average tier, and this one is kind of weird because yes, it does say average, but I don't mean these players just becoming average. It could mean that maybe this prospect is a boom or bust prospect, but it could still mean they could be a great player. Just I think they'll be about an average prospect when it's all said and done. Now for the first player in this average tier, I have Tobias Bjornfoot. I think he's a solid defensive prospect in this 2019 NHL draft. He's from Sweden, had a very solid World Juniors, maybe a little bit disappointing. But when it comes to going foot, he's likely maybe a late second rounder. That's where I see him going, and that's where I think he should go, as he's a solid prospect, but definitely not one of the top ones. And next up in the average tier, I have Antoni Honka. Now this is what I mean by a boom or bust, because Antoni Honka is pretty much the definition of that. He has amazing talents, amazing ceiling, but that ceiling is pretty unlikely for him. I think that he'll more likely bust rather than boom, but if he does turn out to be that fantastic prospect and that fantastic player, that wouldn't at all surprise me, because he has the tools to be that kind of guy. He has that talent. We just haven't really seen it from him recently, and of course he was starting out with the Liga, didn't end up playing there for a long time, but with Antoni Honka, he is pretty talented and probably going in the second/third round. Now next up in the average tier, I have Spencer Knight, the only goaltender in this tier ranking. He's a guy that is the best goaltending prospect, arguably, in this 2019 NHL draft. When it comes to Spencer Knight, of course, being with the USDP team, he had solid numbers, and except the last couple of months. When it came to Spencer Knight, I think the talent is there, certainly. He had a very good World Juniors, but the stats didn't really show that too much, so he's kind of dropped in my opinion. I don't think he should be a first-round pick. I don't think Spencer Knight is that type of guy, but he is a very solid prospect, and I think still the best goalie prospect in this draft. And next up in the average tier, I have Raphael Lavoie. He is in the QMJHL, a right winger with the Mooseheads. He's a solid player, had a fantastic QMJHL playoffs, scoring a ton of points and being overall very solid. But Lavoie is definitely a lot more old than a lot of other prospects in this tier list, and even in this 2019 NHL draft. This is something that is going against him, but he is still pretty solid. While I would have him as a first all-round pick, I wouldn't have him really anything higher than that, than probably like 25 right now. And while the talent is there, I just think he's a little bit too old, at least for me personally. Now next up in the average tier, I have Matthew Robertson. He's a WHL defenseman with the Edmonton Oil Kings, and he is pretty much the definition of average, I would say. For me personally, I think he's probably around a late second round pick. That's what I think I would have him as, maybe even a third round pick. Now last but not least, in the average tier, the last player we have in the average tier, I have Samuel Poulin. Now he is from the QMJHL of the Sherbrooke Phoenix, and he's very interesting prospect because he had an amazing second half, and the talent, he obviously showed that. With Poulin, he's a solid two-way guy, I think. Will be that in the NHL someday, but I don't think he's going to be this fantastic prospect ever. I could see him being a really solid third-line center, maybe even possibly a second-line center, but at that point, I don't think the offense will be completely there. I think the defense will be something that he prioritizes, but I think he will not just be average, a decent NHL player, but obviously not the best. Now, heading into the most fun category of them all, the best tier, the bust tier. And I know how many people will get mad at this for the three players I picked to be in the bust tier. Some of you guys won't like it, but the first person in the bust tier is Philip Broberg. Now, some of you guys might know already, but I'm personally not the biggest fan of Philip Broberg. I had him 31st in my last NHL mock draft, and that was giving him a little bit of credit there. When it comes to Philip Broberg, he's a pretty polarizing prospect in the NHL world, but especially for me, because I see how people might like him. The skating is 100% there. He's an amazing skater, but I'm just not sure the overall game is. When it comes to stick handling, when it comes to just puck control, when it comes to everything offensively, he has potential, but I just have not seen that from him. Defensively, he is solid. I think he can be okay, but I just do not see that really upgrading too much at the next NHL level. Again, the skating is there for Broberg, and that is a big reason why people are so high on him, but for me personally, I just don't really see it. Now, for the second player in the bust tier, I have Brett Leason. He's an NHL Prince Albert Raiders player. He was fantastic to start out the year. He was fantastic, then went to the World Junior Championship team of Team Canada and put up a lot of points. When it comes to Brett Leason, he's been pegged as maybe a late first round or early second round pick, but Brett Leason, I'm just not really personally a big fan of. He has some size, he has some skill, but he's still a little too old in my opinion. He's 19 years old. He's basically a grandpa compared to some of these NHL prospects, and when it comes to Brett Leason, I think he is solid. He likely will be an NHL player, but it will take some time, and I don't think he will be a top 30 prospect whatsoever. Now, last but not least, in the buzz tier, my number 3 player, I have Mikko Kakkonen. Now, he's been a guy that's been all over my rankings from the start of the year on to now. I think at my peak, I had Mikko Kokkonen, I think at number 9 in my mock draft. I think that might have been like November or December. He went off to a brilliant start in the Liga and racking up a ton of points, looking very, very solid from what I saw. And I was a big fan of him at that point. But after, I would say, about December, and especially in the new year, he just dropped like a rock. And in the Liga, the point production basically just disappeared. Now, I still like Mikko Kokkonen. I think he could be an NHL player, but there are some signs that hint that he might be a bust in some areas. Maybe the offensive game, it isn't quite complete. The defense is pretty lackluster. Some of those points were also secondary, so some of those he might not have had too much to do with. And when it comes to Mikko Kokkonen, I think he will be a solid defenseman, likely should be picked in the second round, but he just screams bust to me. Now here you get a good look at every single prospect from franchise all the way down to bust. Obviously you can see here the great section was just filled to the brim of prospects. And I think that's a good thing. The 2019 NHL draft has a lot to offer and a lot of great prospects as well. And when it comes to making this kind of video, it was a lot of fun to make. It was a lot of hard work putting every single prospect into place. But when it came to doing rankings, I didn't want to do just a random rankings video, but I want to do something a little bit different. And this was certainly different compared to what I've done in the past. But of course, with this video, I want to hear your guys' thoughts down the comments down below. So let me know, what do you think of my complete 2019 NHL draft tier list? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? And what would your NHL draft tier list look like? But if you guys want some more Grav videos just like this one, you can click on this card right here to watch my video on my May 2019 NHL mock draft. But that'll be it for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on my tier list, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and what your tier list would look like. And I'll see you guys next video or stream. Goodbye.